Thanks, Matt, for the introduction earlier. Give me an opportunity to talk about atom technologies. As you can see from the slides that I'm going to talk about synthetic biology and machine learning and how we use that to engineer antibodies. Today's talk, you can consider it as an overview of Atom's approach to engineer biomolecules, entities, pathways, genomes. But specifically today, I'm going to talk about how we do engineer antibodies. So it's pretty much taking off where Alex left. You have antibody you've discovered, now you want to be able to optimize it and make it very developable and take it further. So that's where our technology comes in. So before I start, a little a brief thing about Atom. We started many years ago, and we consider ourselves at working at the intersection of data and biology. Been around 16 years, started in 2003. Along the way, we developed lots of different technologies, including the one I'm going to be talking about. We are about 100 people. We're located in a 50,000 square foot facility in Newark, California. And over the years, we have engineered dozens of antibodies, and we've also done countless enzymes using similar approach. So we built a very strong portfolio of various methods, patents, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what do we do with machine learning? So our platform has allowed us to solve very complex biological challenges. We used it across the board in many different applications, everything from trying to express your gene to finding and hunting for enzymes, and also to develop a very highly improved protein enzyme. But today, its focus is going to be more on the antibody engineering. And what's common about all our approaches is that we use a very design, build, test, learn sort of cycle through iterations to do the process. And pardon me for the text here, it didn't translate very well. So this kind of diagram represents how we work. So we set out to do the design, and we build them in the lab. And we have an excellent testing facility with analytics where we test. So this is very important because at the end of the day, good data is the most important, and we generate them. We take it, and then we do the learning, and then we iterate it through. So I'll go through these steps a little bit in more detail. Of course, you can follow it up with me later if you have more questions. The first step is to design the sequences, design the variants from which we can learn. And for that, we use a lot of knowledge base. We looked at various databases, and we have also built over 17 years a data set that we have. And so we know what are all the changes that needs to be made. The idea here is not to make large sets of sequences and test them at using some analytics, but instead to design them so that the coverage of the sequence space is optimal and maximized. So what that allows us to do is to only design about, let's say, 95 to 100 sequences, let's say 96, and then you can test them thoroughly in what you care about. So the design process goes through, and we have one of the top world-leading synthetic biology facilities. We make constructs, we express them, we make the proteins. We make construct varying from anywhere between 1 kb to 500,000 base pairs. So we have the facility, we cycle it through. So we make these variants, and then we pass it on to see what they do. So the emphasis is really on testing. Okay? So good data yields good model yields better proteins later. So why only test 96? Why not test thousands? Because we've seen companies which are developing these high throughput methods to screen thousands and thousands and billions of sequences. But in our experience, they don't work very well. And I try to illustrate that point here, saying that, hey, a fax caliber machine where you sort through cells and sequences is not the same as really testing it in mice. So biology is very, very complicated, and often these high throughput screens are not very good predictors. So what is the solution? So I'd say keep the biology real. So measure it in what you really care about. So measure it in cell lines, measure it in multiple different activities. So that's what we do. The emphasis is really on measuring and collecting high quality data, and we know that originally the sequences were all designed to explore the sequence space really efficiently. So now we have both of these together, and we can put them through a machine learning algorithm, right? So if we implement various algorithms. I know that there are experts here, and we are not heavily in developing these algorithms, but we use many of those that are already developed fully. But the challenge is, how do you represent the sequence space, right? So over the years, we came across what would be an optimal mathematical representation of how you can represent the sequences. In order to do the modeling, we would like to do that, and then correlate them with what are all the properties that you are measuring. Because we are doing only 96, let's say, we can measure any number of different properties that are directly relevant to the developability of these antibodies, okay? So you can go ahead and measure all of them. And you're doing it in 96, so you can get good quality data. So we say, okay, so we have a functional representation. It was very, very hard to see what's going on. So we say, okay, machine learning algorithm, do something for me, and it spits out models. And we are able to get really good, robust models for very complicated antibody characteristic, representing real biology. What does the model do? Model does predictions. So we are able to get good predictions from these models, as directly correlating with the biological properties of these molecules, not just binding, not just expression, but everything put together that helps you take it all the way as a product development. Okay, so here is a simple example of what the model spits out. It tells you, okay, these are all the various amino acid substitution going from left to right. And in this particular case, we are just looking at 3 different properties: the titer, the TM, and the KD, or binding affinity. Okay, it is very complicated. Some substitutions can increase both or all. Some can have a interplay between each other, and we are able to decipher every one of these using our models. So from the model, then we can do predictions and build new sets. That's where the iteration comes through. A new design set of variants, now completely informed from the models, empirical models that we develop using real data and accurate data. So I'm going to show you a very simple case study here, a few slides of what we have done to one of the commercial antibodies we took. We explored a very large sequence space here. We have a heavy chain that was 10 to the 12, light chain 10 to the 10. We are able to combine them, total space of about 10 to the 23. So we did that, and then we built the genes, we designed them, built the genes, tested them on various different properties. And here, every dot in this plot shows a particular substitution made, either in the CDR or in the framework, and what impact does it have on any given property. Imagine drawing this in 10 dimensions, right? So we're always able to find certain substitutions and combinations and interplay that directly gives you a readout on how you can improve and make changes to the antibody and make them better. The key here is measure as few as possible, but still explore a lot of sequence space. Okay? So I've shown you here 5 iterations, totaling only measuring 184 antibodies. Okay? And we are able to improve this on various different properties. So it's the same antibody here. I'm showing 3 dimensions here, although we did measure a lot more. Mind that the original antibody was already a commercial product. It was well behaved, well performed, and we are able to still improve the activity, or in this case binding affinity, really well, while still maintaining a lot of other properties. Okay. So you don't have to do large libraries, screening. As long as you do really efficient learning using a limited data set. For that, you need to upfront build and test and learn from those. And again, it's key to have good data relevant data, commercially important data, not just any screening that you can do because it's just large. So some key points I'm going to leave you behind. The last slide part is not visible. So it's not about necessarily screening lots and lots of it, but also it's about exploring a very, very large sequence space. But you can really do that with minimal number of variants. Okay, so we are able to show that keeping it under 200 variants, we are able to explore a space of 10 to the 23. And again, it's important that you measure what you care about, not because there was an instrument available that can do screening at 10 to the 6, 10 to the 8, and so on. Okay? And the last point is not clear here, but again, it's about engineering the molecule for commercial application. It's not about just increasing the binding affinity, so you have to take into account any number of dimensions or activities that are important, that are key for developability. So that's what I got today, and I'm happy to follow up with any questions. I don't know how much time we have. Thank you so much, and thanks, Matt, for giving me an opportunity to be here.
Got time for one more question if no one, there's one over there.
Question for Sridhar. Thank you very much for the talk. I wanted to ask if you could provide some details on how you pick those 96 or 200 variants that you further test.
Yeah, so we have a repository of data that shows what are all the changes in the past that's been made and how successful they have been to binding some epitopes. And we have also compiled a list of substitutions from literature. So we have a pool of, let's say, 1,000 changes you can make. So what we tend to do is we rank order these changes for the particular problem, and we take about 50, 60 of those and design 96 variants so that each of those changes are represented in multiple variants, and each variant have multiple of these. So it's kind of a building a what you call as a mutual information rich set of substitution, not in any way trying to explore all combinations, but can give you a very good idea of additivity involved. And we are really looking for additive substitutions and not necessarily complicated interplays.
Thank you.